In 1789, James Madison had a problem. After living for 10 years under the Articles of Confederation, Madison had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to bring about a constitution to devise a convention to devise a new constitution. In September of 1786, he participated in a preliminary convention in Annapolis. By 1787, he had secured enough support of key players like George Washington and Ben Franklin to convene a constitutional convention in Philadelphia. Now, the pressure was on the 36-year-old Madison. Before journeying to Philadelphia, he crammed for the gathering, like a student for his exams, from a chest full of books that had been supplied to him by his friend and mentor, Thomas Jefferson. For the cerebral Madison had a truly fundamental problem to solve. Like many others, he had concluded that the American regime, governed by the Articles of Confederation, was grossly inadequate and contrary to what the Virginia Declaration of Rights referred to as the common benefit, protection, and security of the people. But why was this happening? Why had the republicanism of the founding generation failed them so? For the previous 13 years, the people of the United States had been governed by 13 separate entities. State governments under the Articles of Confederation were thought to be Republican. The founders had thrown off rule by the aristocratic few in favor of rule by the democratic many. Under aristocracy, if the many are screwed by the few, the Democratic or Republican alternative was premised on the belief that the people wouldn't screw themselves. This is Cook County. This is how we talk in Cook County. But this Republican theory, the people wouldn't screw themselves, had unexpectedly proven to be false. State legislatures had begun enacting debtor relief laws that both undermine the rights of creditors and impaired economic prosperity, which required a credit market that can safely rely on the obligation of private contracts to collect from debtors. States also erected a debilitating assortment of trade barriers to protect their own businesses from competing firms in neighboring states. The result was a national economic downturn, a really Great Depression. So Republican government, as it was then conceived, was clearly not working for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people. But why not? Now, to answer this question, in April of 1787, largely for his own benefit, Madison composed an essay that's called The Vices of the Political System of the United States. But it was not an essay for publication. It was an essay for his own benefit. It was like a working paper for him to figure out what the game plan needed to be for the upcoming Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. And so we have this document. It's a remarkable document because it shows how he was sorting through this problem. What was the problem? In Vices, Madison identified the source of the problem in what he called the injustice of the laws of the state. So first of all, the problem was that the laws the states were passing were unjust. The causes of this evil, he contended, could be traced to the representative bodies in the states, and ultimately, he said, to the people themselves. This, he wrote, called into question, quote, the fundamental principle of Republican government, that the majority who rule in such governments are the safest guardians both of the public good and of private rights. Madison concluded that we must be far more realistic about popular majorities. All civilized societies, he explains, quote, are divided into different interests and factions as they happen to be creditors or debtors, rich or poor, husbandmen, merchants or manufacturers, members of different religious sects, followers of different political leaders, inhabitants of different districts, owners of different kinds of property, etc. In a democracy, the debtors outnumber the creditors and the poor outnumber the rich. The larger group can simply outvote the smaller one. The majority, however composed, he continued, quoting him, ultimately give the law. Whenever, therefore, an apparent interest or common passion unites a majority, what is to restrain them from unjust violations of the rights and interests of the minority or of individuals? To illustrate this problem, Madison posed the following thought experiment, quote, place 3 individuals in a situation where the interest of each depends on the voice of the others, and give two of them an interest opposed to the rights of the third? Will the latter be secure? The prudence of every man would shun the danger, he said. Likewise, he asked, will 2,000 in a like situation be less likely to encroach upon the rights of the 1,000? In short, under the democratic version of republicanism of the day, there is nothing stopping a majority of the polity from engaging in self-dealing at the expense of the minority. Now, Madison concluded that what was needed was nothing less than a new Republican form of government that would address the weakness of democratic state governments while preserving popular sovereignty. As Madison put it, quote, to secure the public good and private rights against the danger of such a faction, and at the same time preserve the spirit and form of popular government, is then the great object of to which our inquiries are directed.